So, welcome everyone to Back to Coach Connect. Here's where we explore the strategies and stories and insights from trailblazers who are transforming the world of coaching well-being. What drives their success? What fuels their passion for helping others? We're here to uncover their secrets and share them with you. This show is brought to you by Vibely.io, the all-in-one coaching platform designed to empower coaches with the tools, resources, and support they need to thrive and help their clients achieve meaningful and long-lasting growth. I'm Dr. Diego Salinas, your guide on this journey. As a neuroscientist, physician, and health coach, and now co-founder of Vibely, I'm committed to celebrating the incredible work of coaches everywhere and helping them unlock their full potential. So let's dive in to what makes coaching powerful and a force of change. For today, we're honored to welcome back Jen Wright. Jen Wright is the co-founder of Wellspired Co., where she combines her passion for wellness with a deep commitment to supporting health and wellness coaches as they grow their careers in practice. With over 14 years of digital marketing experience and 6 years as a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, Jen's become known for her ability to blend practical business advice with a genuine client-focused approach to coaching. She's dedicated to helping coaches create sustainable, fulfilling careers that prioritize well-being for both their clients and themselves. Wellspired Co. provides mentorship, advanced training, and community for certified health and wellness coaches looking to build sustainable, fulfilling careers, enhance professional confidence, and create meaningful client transformations, whether in private practice, working with organization, or balancing both. Jen's a national board certified health and wellness coach and draws on her background in leadership and business development to help coaches navigate the challenges of running a thriving practice. She's passionate about creating spaces where coaches can connect, learn, and grow. Excited to share her experience and insights with the next generation of wellness professionals. So, Jen, welcome back to the podcast. Honored to have you on today.
Thanks for having me back. Excited
Yeah.
to be here. Thanks, Diego.
Yeah. So, our last podcast about turning resolutions to realities in 2025, and this time of the year, people are making a lot of changes. A lot of people are saying, maybe it's time to start my practice now. All right, just finished a program. I've been coaching for a while. I think 2025 is going to be the year. We've heard that a lot, so we figured let's have Jen right back on and share some more insights on all those people who are there maybe for the first time starting out, trying the coaching career, or those who have been for a while and want to optimize and see what's happening in the current trends. So yeah, Jen, thanks for making the time. And I know it's a very requested topic from a lot of our audience members.
Oh, well, that's really great. I think it's really common that health and wellness coaches, consider private practice as one of the pathways that they want to pursue, right? After they get out of their training. So much so that a lot of the programs nowadays do have some sort of at least one piece, right? Maybe, albeit maybe small, to start thinking about, well, what would this look like if I had my own business, right? And although, right, there's only so much that they can provide in there, it at least is like that starting point to get them started and starting to think about it, which is really great. I'm glad to see that training programs are including that information in there. I was actually just talking with someone the other day and went through their coaching program, paid thousands of dollars, practiced forever and ever. It feels like, right? How many practice hours do we put in only to kind of finally get out into the workforce area and space and be met with, $20 an hour coaching jobs. And they were shocked, right? They didn't really know what to do. So it was a full entire conversation with us. And she said, okay, let's map this out. I really, truly want to understand what can my effective hourly coaching rate be in a private practice, and really seeing that, that is why a lot of coaches do choose to go into the private practices, because they can choose their own rate. They can choose what feels equitable and fair to them, along with what fits their clients, and really work through several different options, whether that's one-on-one coaching, whether that's group coaching, whether that's maybe something else in addition to that, right? And so being able to have multiple streams of revenue that come into your business can really be a great way to go as a health coach. So yeah, and be able to increase, right, that rate. So you're not, stuck in a $20 an hour job after spending as much money as we did, or as much time and investment that we did to become the professionals that we are. So
Yeah, recoup that investment, and really what we do is really valuable work, right? And you should be valued for that. And there's a lot of coaches wanting all the benefits of autonomy. There's autonomy of price structure, autonomy of scheduling, choose your hours, autonomy of, I think, also topics that are covered. That's what I hear a lot. Sometimes you might work for a company or position, and I've heard there's two kind of avenues. Either It could be a coaching role, but then sometimes they're not always exactly coaching. It's kind of like the title says coach, but they're like, I'm kind of doing more sales here, or more just triage.
Yeah.
Or I say coaches who maybe work in well-being space, but they don't get a coach directly in that practice. They might help other coaches supervision, but they kind of miss that. Or they're doing a coaching job, but they're not allowed to practice in the areas they want to work in. Like for me, I like working with adolescents, and a lot of companies liability don't want to touch with 10-foot pole. And so there's a lot of communities that become underserved for different reasons, different languages, different kind of niches fall through the cracks. And here's a chance to kind of win-win-win, right? You can kind of set your hourly rate, get paid more, set your schedule, and really provide a better therapeutic alliance with your clients because you're bringing your passion and your foresight forward. And that actually helps against burnout when you spend energy the way you want to spend energy. So you get more, but also you get more back on the internal battery, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would completely agree with that. Actually, right before we jumped in here, finished doing our monthly class for our membership community that we have. And we were talking about the future of health and wellness coaching when it comes to AI and digital tools. And it was just
Mhm.
it was a fascinating conversation, right? But it just leans right into exactly what you were saying, Diego, which is, if you're with an organization, right, they're going to have specific platforms that you have to use, or specific tracking tools that have to be used, right? And we were talking about the benefit of being in kind of solo practice or small business as far as a health and wellness coach goes, and having the ability to stay flexible, and so that we can really choose to be able to offer those as tools or options for our clients in our coaching session. They can choose what tool works best for them and have a better level of attainment and have kind of that better outcome that happens because they have more buy-in, they have more investment in the tool that they want to use. And so even that is an example for being able to say whether it's a topic that they want to talk about, a tool that they might want to use and try.
Mhm.
Like as a small solo health and wellness coach, we have the ability to be flexible and meet our clients where they're at in that space, which is just, I think in itself just says so much for health and wellness coaches in small practice. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think for the whole industry too, we talked before, but looking at predictors of success for clients, there's many things that go into that, right? And
Mm.
there's client factors and there's provider factors, right? And one of the biggest is therapeutic alliance, a
Mhm.
fancy word for the connection that you have. And if you look at predicts that from the provider standpoint, it's authenticity and passion,
Mm.
right? And so the freedom there allows, I think coaching is this in this while relatively new profession, there's so much opportunity for creative growth and solutions that providers who really know their kind of market's pain points or like stuff like can really help out, right? So I've heard people do coaching while they go on walks or in nature, for
Mhm.
example, right? Can't really do that in a traditional office setting. I, for example, do very long coaching sessions. I do 90-minute plus sessions. Some people do 15-minute sessions, right? So as long as people say, well, what should I do? I'm like, here's where you can really be creative. You've learned the evidence-based approach. You have other resources. You can try things out. And that flexibility of not having bureaucracy and tape over you, you can really learn something and adapt the next client, right? Really be your own manager, your own provider, your own supervisor.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Being your own boss definitely has some great benefits to it. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. And I think it just leans into kind of the importance. Before we started recording, you were saying, like, what are some of the most common questions that I get, right? As,
Yeah.
new coaches are coming to me. And I would say one of the number one questions that I get is, do I really have to choose a niche? Do I really have to choose an ideal client that I have to work with? Do I have to be stuck with just one? But I think in what you're talking about, you don't necessarily have to. That's the beauty of being in practice, is that we can flex and work with multiples, right? But one of the things that can be really great is that when we do identify who that persona is that we generally really enjoy working with, we can then start taking that as a look at our business and actually start building off of that to say, okay, well, what is the primary pain point in the challenge that they're experiencing? What is the end goal that they ultimately really want to get to? Like, where is it that they really achieve? And understand that coaching is likely just one piece or one feature in the overall solution that we're able
Mm.
to offer them as a coach, which offers us the ability to be able to say, okay, well, maybe it sounds like, the challenges that they're experiencing, they say they really want tracking tools. So let me go ahead and create a list of tracking tools that we can have a discussion about. And now, after you've done that for one client, right, and you've created that resource, the next client you work with, that's the same persona and the same ideal client, is likely going to want that same resource too. So you start having
Mm,
some efficiency that happens in your business when you work with that same ideal client, because that conversation and the themes, right, start to repeat each other a little bit more. And so there's a lot of really great benefits to choosing a niche or an ideal client. Not to say that you have to say no to everyone else, right? But one of the beauties of it is that efficiency to be able to say, hey, I've got this list of really great resources and it works so well for this particular type of person. And then you start to become known as the sort of the coach to know for that particular ideal
mm,
client, right? You start getting known in
yeah.
their circles and in their networks. So there's so many benefits to really identifying who it is that you love working with. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a question I get asked too. It's like, should you niche down or not? And right from the business perspective, even marketing, knowing your target audience and
Mhm.
where they're at, what problems they have, very helpful. Like you mentioned, Jen, you able to provide, become known as that kind of thought leader there. And also one thing we've talked before on Bible, like having multiple options that people earlier on may not sure, they may be between multiple niches
Mhm.
and they get stuck like, oof. And so we're saying, can we give you tools, for example? One tool we have is you can have multiple services. So as you're trying out, you can experiment with multiple niches and then see what you enjoy most, maybe it's also most successful, or how those two combine. I tend to work with a lot of kind of mental health and burnout for healthcare workers and executives, but also parents from pediatrics. And so they're very different target audiences, different messaging, but you can still provide both. And as long as you have expertise in both and keep the door open for experimentation. And so I think thinking about this business, one thing I've seen, I'm really curious for your experience here, Jen, is that we learn coaching. Spend all this time on money doing that. But then your solo practice is a whole different skill set,
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, business. And it can feel overwhelming or all or none. And I want people to know it's a process of learning, just like you learn how to coach. And at first it felt overwhelming, right? Reflect
Yeah.
back, do this, keep it. And then with time it became easier. And I went to a conference years ago when I was in this early transition. And the physician coach also spoke, and he said, listen, at first, the ratio of hours spent preparing versus coaching is going to be way bigger. As you mentioned, you're starting to learn what tools work. Okay, maybe don't send this contract this way. Do maybe my cancellation policy. But as you get better at it and your client referrals is coming in, that ratio is going to shorten.
Mhm.
You're not going to be 1 to 1, but expect the beginning is a lot more of that prep time outside of the session hour.
Mhm.
And then this over time will shorten. Can you speak a little bit to that, or kind of maybe the expectation of a trajectory, what that might actually really look like, or kind of, I think sometimes people want this all or none. It's not happening yet. It's like, yeah, you're planting a seed. It's gonna take a while to grow.
Yeah. Well, I think there's several aspects of that, right? When you're
Yeah.
first starting, and you're totally right on. Like when you're very first starting, no one ever starts and opens their business and from day one is like, wow, I have a full calendar, right? Unless they're like, the small percentage, they're leaving, maybe they've been working as a maybe an occupational therapist or a physical therapist, or they've been working in a different capacity
Yeah.
with an existing network of people that are like ready to refer you, right? That
Yeah.
in those instances, I have heard where people are like, I feel like I opened up day one and it was like a
Mhm.
flood of people coming in. I would say for the average coach, that's not necessarily the case, right? We don't have that existing referral network ready to go. And so in those instances, there's a ramp up period, right? And being really having that expectation for what that ramp up period looks like is incredibly important. And knowing that, what I usually say is to expect when you very first start and open your practice that you're spending about 80% of your time on marketing tasks and getting yourself out there, marketing and networking, right? And getting yourself out there and what that looks like and really implementing that. And one of my recommendations that I have is to set your work schedule day one as you're getting your business up and running, and having those available hours that you're saying, okay, these are my coaching available hours. And when you start, those are going to be completely empty, right? They're going to not, you don't have clients yet. They're completely empty. So instead, you fill that time with your marketing time and your networking time. And then as you start filling in clients into those slots and into those spots, then slowly your marketing time goes down because your client load starts to go up. That's when those referral relationships start to step in and you start getting referrals, and it does get a lot easier at that point. But that's a great way to do it is, you know I would say the number one kind of challenge that I hear from coaches that come to me and say, hey, I've started a business, I'm really struggling to get myself up and running. I'll say, okay, what does your schedule look like every single week? What does that consistency look like? And they'll say, I don't really have any because I don't have any clients yet. And that's the problem in itself, right? You need to create the consistency first and create the schedule, and then eventually it will fill in with the clients. But we have to have those consistent actions that we take in order to be able to build to where we want to be. So yeah, great
Yeah.
question.
You said 8%. I heard a 10-to-1 ratio, kind of similar numbers there. Yeah. First, it's going to be
Mhm.
mostly the work to get there. And as you said, I almost a picture came in my mind, Jen. I almost imagine, let's say it was a brick and mortar store. Right? I know most coaches do
Mhm.
digital work, right?
Right.
Which is, and me and my coaches know this. I'm working on my organization as well,
Mhm.
and my scheduling, putting things in there versus nebulousness, because otherwise it can fall through. And saying, can you organize your schedule even when you work from home, almost as if you were going to a store. So if you had a storefront and there are no clients around, you'd be waiting in the store. You might have to go online and talking to the vendors or doing ads, because you're there, might as well, close at 5 p.m. So let me get some stuff done while no one comes in. So almost think of it that way. You have your general hours and you're still working. When the clients are in, client work. In the meantime,
Mhm.
it's work to get more clients. So you can almost like check in and check out, like have a, making sure you're putting a process-based step from coaching instead of an outcome-based step to
Yeah,
get to those goals, right? And then
exactly.
consistently following that as well. Um, Jen, can I actually touch on that too? Something I think we briefly touched on last time we discussed, but that mindset change that you talk about. I think another one I've seen too with early coaches
Mhm.
is kind of saying, "Well, I'll get started once I have clients."
Mhm.
Like I'll take my payment system and then figure out nodes and figure out my content policy once I start clients. And I kind of can go back to this brick and mortar analogy. Like, get that something people to buy or sell or to contact you. You get to the system in place first. And so when they come to you, you can right away do the processes, take the payment. Because if you take too long, they're going to change their mind.
Mhm.
Right? You want to,
Mhm.
when they're ready, capture that, which not only helps the generation or conversion from lead to client, but also gives them actually better quality experience of customer service. Like, oh, that was smooth transition. Like, I talked to this coach and my contract is there right away after our call, and I send them payment, and I see their calendar. Like, okay, so that's really part of your customer experience, so to speak. Starts when they
Yeah.
first meet you. Every point of that is part of their experience. You are the front desk person and the back desk and support calls, and so really thinking about how that affects their impression of what it's like to work with you or your group.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. The moment that you meet that person for the first time is their first impression of you. And that goes through all the way to the point where they decide to work with you, to the point where they are working with you, to the point where they advocate for you and actually refer other people to come and find you. Right. And so that whole experience really does need to be a really great one. We need to set a really good impression and break down the barriers, make it easier for them to schedule the appointments and show up, and also offer the flexibility that we were talking about before, right? So really talking to them about their preferences. Do they prefer to meet with you on Zoom, or is it easier for them to do phone coaching, right? And so as private practice, we have the ability to be a little bit more flexible in that, and be able to flex a little bit more, which is really great. So I think I think that's a really great point, as you're kind of talking about what that experience looks like the entire time. When I talk to coaches that are very first getting started, one of the things that I tell them is that, coaching businesses have sort of a life journey in them in their self, right? So there's four phases what we talk about as we're building out our business. There's like phase one, you're in the startup phase, you're really getting all of your systems, you're getting your processes set up, you're trying to figure it out, just like you were talking about, right? And a lot of times that can kind of sometimes feel like as if you got hired by a business and now you're in training, right? You're the coach in training. And instead of having someone next to you who's like going to be walking you through every single step and things like that, you have to do it on your own, right? And so
Mm,
it can feel a little clunky. I always tell people it kind of feels like you're walking through mud sometimes, right? It's a little bit challenging, but we'll get out of that mud eventually. It'll start getting easier, right? And once you're out of that startup phase, that's how you're out of that startup phase is like you have that beginning onboarding process all completed, like you were talking about. So you can accept payments and you can schedule with clients and you can get them through that from that initial point of contact, that initial consult, all the way to the point where they pay you. And that and that's streamlined. And when that happens, you're really out of that startup phase and you're moving into that next phase. The next phase is called book 5. That's what we call it. We say book 5, which means you're booking your first 5 clients, first 5 paying clients, ideally. And in that phase, right, it looks a little bit different than it might look like in the future, because like you were talking about, you're probably still figuring out who your ideal client is, figuring out which niche you really enjoy working with, right? You might have a couple that you're still trying to weigh out and figure out. And the goal would be is after those like 5, you really start to get a good understanding of, okay, I really love working with this particular type of client and understanding what that looks like, right? And that can look like a lot of different things. So just a little caveat, right? Like when we think of niche or ideal client, it doesn't necessarily have to be so honed into like, women who are 35 and da 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 da, right? Like we talk, and they go to Starbucks and get this type of coffee.
And they're runners who wear Nike sneakers and this kind of socks.
Yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't need to be at that level, right? So what is our niche? Our niche is we're identifying what is the problem that we solve and what is the end desire that they're trying to get to at the end of the day. And there's a type of person that's going to fit within that particular, those two types of things, right? There's going to be a common denominator that we will start to identify over time. So that is like a key piece within that as well. And so your book 5 actually a lot of times can come from your existing network, right? Think about like LinkedIn and Facebook and your family and friends, right? Of people that might actually know someone. It's not necessarily them that you're coaching, but they might know someone that fits the pain point that you're helping to solve. It fits the person who's looking for that end result that you're really helping them to achieve, right? And so the first 5 really can come from your existing network that's out there. After you get past those 5, then you're starting to, your friends and family get a little tired of you asking over and over again, do you have anybody, right? So we have to start expanding beyond our friends and family. And that starts getting into how do we do that, right? How do we start building an audience? How do we start creating a warm list of people who would potentially be interested in working with us, and what does that strategy look like? And that shifts quite significantly between that book 5 and moving into what we call the next phase, which is your build phase. So that's building your business to being 75% booked out. So I would say, I think as long as coaches understand that there is this journey that happens, right? We are in a startup, we're in a training phase, and then we're in book 5. And the way we get those first 5 clients looks a lot different than the way that we're building out into the next, right? So something that comes in mind with that as we talk through it is, some marketing people are going to be like, you need an extensive website, you need a funnel, you need, all of these things, right, that are super expensive. You need to place ads, right? I've had some coaches come to me very beginning. They barely have a way to accept payment. And someone said, well, yeah, someone said I need to do Facebook ads. And I thought, oh my gosh, do not do Facebook ads right now, right? Like maybe later we can look at that and talk about it, but you don't even have a way to accept payment right now. So if you started paying for ads and someone came to you, you wouldn't even have a way to accept payment. Let's not make that a step right now. Really understanding where you are in that journey so that you are actually putting your time and investment in the right places. So yeah.
Right. And great call, Jen, that like what works early on is different. It's going to evolve what your strategy going to evolve, and kind of take it like just like walking. First you crawl and you walk, and those first 5, I'm sure you're going to learn a whole lot about what these clients are seeking and what their pain points are, what kind of language they use, and maybe you get new ideas of a different way to provide that service, or maybe a different twist on it with a broader audience, or maybe more niche down, right? But that's actually your learning phase too, that will teach you your operating procedures, and then it's like my co-founder Jobs all the time, I'm always like, how do we automate this? He's like, do it manually first. Make sure it happens often enough that's worth the energy to create a system of automation, because it's efficient if it's automated, but not unless it happens a lot, or in your case, the example of paying for ads. If you don't have things afterwards, it's actually really inefficient. You paid for ads, you can't take payment. Those people aren't going to come back to you a month later.
Right.
They've already heard about you and moved on and forgot, right? So really having things in place so when someone is at that very sometimes brief moment of ready to make something, you're kind of set in place. And there's a lot of advice people get in here, and it can feel so overwhelming as someone starting. And I know I've talked offline about, maybe you could speak to this, that maybe it's more than one way to skin a cat here. I don't want to use that analogy, but more than one way to do things. That like, you say, well, I'm not good at X, Y, and Z. I'm not good at this and this. I see people doing it this way. I can't do that. It's not for me. Can you speak a little bit about kind of is it multiple ways to do this, or is there really only one way to do it? How can people bring their own individuality to this journey?
Oh, that's a really interesting question that you asked. So, one of our mottos at Wellspired is that we take the coaching approach to business, is what we say, right?
Okay.
So that means that, everything that we do, we can look at our values, we can look at our strengths, we can look at what our ultimate vision and goals are for our business, and that can lead us back to the answer of the next step where we need to move forward in our business, right? Because at the end of the day, if we aren't thriving and we aren't feeling our best as coaches, our business cannot exist or succeed. And so that
Mm,
is a critical piece of running and growing your business, right? Is making sure
yeah.
that you are actually just first. So we actually take a little bit of a backwards approach versus where a lot of other companies will maybe guide you to, which is like, look at the ideal client first, find out what their needs are, work your hours around your client. And instead we say, okay, let's inventory ourselves first, what's actually successful for us in the long term, and then let's use that as information to be able to build our business from there. So,
Brilliant.
so I think the answer is twofold. Yes, there are many multiple ways to be able to do some of these things. Now, are some of the ways that people are going to suggest maybe in the wrong order? Yeah, absolutely, right? Like we don't want to do ads first before we have some other things in place. So there's definitely some pieces that need to kind of go in the right place, but also at the end of the day, there's many ways to make that happen, in that we want to address sort of what fits us best first as coaches, so that we can have a long-term sustainable successful business for years to come, right? This isn't like a 6-month venture and then we're done and moved on. Like this is years and years and years we're looking at, right? And so if we truly want to have a business that is set up for the long term, that is what we need to look at. And then we need to kind of use that as the information to move forward. So,
First of all, I love the approach. Clearly, applying coaching principles of change to any category, including starting a business, brilliant. And also from the perspective of, I'm thinking my background with personally going through burnout, how people to burnout. Right, there's many models to this, but
yep.
one version is it's not about not spending energy. People confuse like, oh well, like how am I going to do this? I'm gonna be a little long-winded, but I'll do my best here. They work for a company. They say, well, I want to my private practice, but I don't have the time and energy to do it after work. I'm so tired.
Mm,
I've been there before. And I'll tell you, I really enjoyed that extra time because even though there's more hours in my day, I was so fulfilled with my
mm,
private clients. I could do my long session with the population I wanted to without being limited, that I couldn't wait to have 3 more hours of work in the afternoon. Not just because it made me more money, because I actually really enjoyed it. So for burnout, it's not about not spending energy. It's trying to spend as much energy you can in things that you naturally enjoy doing and
mhm,
minimizing those that you don't, that ratio.
mhm.
And as we mentioned earlier, at first, it might be a little more, not everyone loves marketing. The coaches didn't go into coaching for marketing, but
Yeah.
you might have some of that. So let's be realistic. There's always be things that you want to do. But a big part of this is saying it's not just sustainability of your business, but sustainability of you as a person. That if you figure out what continues to make you sustainable, your overall health and well-being, you're playing to your strengths you want, that actually, besides being better for your clients, you as a provider are going to be happier, more fulfilled, and more resilient toward burnout. So it's not just
Yeah.
like taking care of it, get the money nowadays, follow blueprints. Like you are your own blueprint. You create this your version that's sustainable for you because it's definitely possible. Like all our clients we work with, many people
Yeah.
lose weight through different ways, right? They have to be sustainable for that person. There's common things and common principles and techniques that we can borrow from, but the actual implementation nuance might vary depending on if you like writing more, or you more better, or you feel more comfortable on camera, for example, right? That you can now play to your strengths and don't have to say, oh, there's not enough options. I'm not good on video. I'm not good on writing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think we can relate to our clients, like exactly what you were saying in some of these instances where there is this level of discomfort that happens because it's the first time we're doing it, right? So we imagine some of our other clients that we work with,
Mhm.
right, might be trying something new for the first time and there's a lot of resistance there, right? Because it's like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. I've never done it before. Well, that's exactly what business is, right? I've actually told so many people that business has been the most intense personal development journey that I've ever been on in my entire life. I've learned more about myself, right? And
Mhm.
grown more as a human because of the fact that I am growing this business and running this business, because it does challenge you every single day. And when you're first doing it, it feels extremely uncomfortable. And I will still say there's things that I just had a conversation with our operations manager this week, and she was like, yeah, I think we need to start doing that. And I was like, ooh, that feels really uncomfortable for me. I don't know. I don't know anything about that particular digital technology or things like that. And so I still achieve, those levels of discomfort happen all the time. It doesn't end.
Mm,
And so, I think it's a key thing. The more you can kind of wrap your head around that mindset piece of like, it's uncomfortable. Absolutely. It's going to be uncomfortable because it's the first time you're doing something, but the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? And knowing that the first time anybody did any of this, they weren't perfect or good at it either, right? So we're all kind of in that beginning phase and we all grow from there. So that just goes to messaging with, if you're comparing yourself against anybody on social media and it's like, well, why is it so easy for them to be on reels and videos and so natural for them? Well, behind the scenes, you probably haven't seen it, but they've probably spent hours and hours and hours of practicing something, right? There was
yeah.
a stat out there that I had heard at one point in time, and I just really thought I resonated with it a lot. And it said, you know, you have to practice something, right? So there's a couple different theories on this, right? But 100 times in order to really feel like you're achieving a level of mastery, right? There's the 10,000 hours that goes behind a
Mm,
level of mastery, right? So there's a lot of things, but I loved the idea of just like knowing that 100 times is really like a number that you can stand behind. It's kind of a tangible number to say, okay, I have to do 100 videos before I'm going to start to be like, this is starting to feel comfortable to me, right? I have to do a
mm,
100, consults, discovery calls before they start to feel routine and natural for me. And just know that that 100 number is the number or the goal that you're after to say, it's going to be uncomfortable now, but the sooner I can get to 100, the easier it's going to get. Right. And so
mm.
really holding that as kind of a milestone for yourself. So,
Yeah, yeah. Great analogy from our client work, right? That
mhm.
it's not a negative sign or indication it feels bad or feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That is not a sign of lack of success or you're doing the wrong thing. It actually
Mhm.
makes sense. And you mentioned being an entrepreneur in your own practice, how much is your personal growth, right? And luckily it's because you're always reaching that zone of proximal development, right? You're always like, here's uncomfortable, here's where I grow. When you reach that skill, then there's a next skill that's your zone of proximal development, right? So the problems you have now, you're only able to face because you solved problems 3 years ago that now are just not a problem. So you don't think about it. And often in our journey, some of our clients, frankly, they'll only focus on the problem ahead and be like, oh, I'm so ineffective, right? Like you're like at the peak of Mount Everest. It's only 100 feet away. You're like, look how far you've come. Even if you get to the peak,
Exactly.
that's a few 100,000 miles, right? Or thousand miles, excuse me. So yeah, the discomfort is not a bad sign. And also, I've kind of used this analogy for skating. Sometimes people go, "How do you skate?" I'm like, every time you skate, you're a better skater. Your body just gets used to it.
Mhm.
Like, just got to put in the hours in. It's like just the more times you want to be better, just do it again. And I definitely learned a lot what didn't work. I'll tell you that during my time. And in the moment, it could feel so frustrating. My co-founders have supported me in this. I'm like, this is my own journey now, trying to business. And man, I look back at some of the recordings. I'm like, oh my God. They're like, yeah, this part is a little new for you. You have skill in other places, but this is definitely a new skill for you. But I'm like, okay, but look how far I've come. I'm not
Yep.
talking the whole hour now when I meet someone, right? There's all these things, and it's gonna get better. And even if I'll say, because you mentioned the word mindset, I want to get more into that. Because one thing I also want to say, some things may always feel a little uncomfortable. It's okay still.
Mhm.
Like I think a lot of coaches struggle with asking for payment or taking payment. We're always
Yep.
under, well, I can offer you a discount before even someone asks for it, right? Or
Mm.
I don't know, can I pay you to coach you? Like it's almost like we're trying to, pay them to for us to give them the services. And I got better at it now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I still love doing it. Right. So also just those things that you will get better at and good. You can be efficient and they're not a blocker for you. It doesn't mean you're gonna love doing all these parts of this either. Right. I
Yep.
don't love doing some of the after work part, but I'm getting more efficient at it. It allows me to do more of what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I mean, there's so much, I feel like that's so true, right? In so many different areas of like business building and marketing is that there's not only is there going to be spots that always just feel really uncomfortable. And that's kind of just the way that business goes. And the more you can get used to that and know it and almost like associate that with almost like excitement and a good thing, like, yes, this is uncomfortable. That means I'm growing. It means I'm doing
yes.
something really cool and exciting in my business. And actually like, you know, neuroscience, right? Like
Mhm.
rewarding yourself for that experience to help to connect those neural pathways to be like, ooh,
Yeah.
unfamiliar actually means good. And so how do we change ourselves to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in addition to that, right, I think that at the end of the day, like for instance, for me, I mean, I'm growing, right? Because here I am on video. I had the longest time when I was actually doing a lot more in health and wellness coaching that I absolutely hated being on video. I hated it. It was so just,
Mm,
it wasn't only just uncomfortable for me, but it actually like my body went into anxiety, right? I started
yeah.
to like really get anxious about it. And so, if I listened to all the coaches out there that were like business coaches that said you have to be on video, that's what you have to do, that's where you have to be, I'd be still sitting back there, sitting in my, chair saying like, I hate video. I don't want to be on video. But instead, I had to find another way to get around it. And the same thing happens with, so many other coaches that I talk to as well. It's like, if there's truly something that's just going to be way too big of a leap for you, let's find the answer to get around that until you're ready for that. Because there's a million different ways to market yourself and there's a million different ways to grow your business. Like we mentioned, there's right ways and there's maybe ways that are kind of out of order, which is totally fine. But, if you creating a personalized strategy for marketing your business is really what it should be all about, right? Taking that coaching approach, finding the strengths and values that you're really good with, and being able to apply that to what your marketing strategy looks like in your business. So maybe you love writing. If you love
Mm,
writing, great. Let's do emails. Let's do blogs. Let's
yeah.
do guest articles, right? And all of these things that you can do. Maybe you absolutely do love being on video. Great. Maybe you love social media for the creative aspect of it. That's awesome. I know so many coaches out there that are like, I absolutely hate being on social media. It is against my personal wellness, goals
Yeah.
and lifestyle that I'm after. And I'm like, great. You don't have to be on social media. And the relief that I see melt away from them when I say, perfect.
Mm,
I release you from the pressure of having to be on social media. You do not need to be on social media. There is
yeah.
an immediate sense of relief that happens for them that they feel. And you don't have to be on social media, right? There's a million different ways to market yourself. So find what works best for you. So
Yeah, I think that coaching course, it's the next best thing, right? What can you do, not what's the ultimate. If your 6 month
mhm.
goal is to start a business, what's the next week goal?
Yeah.
Right. And as you mentioned earlier, kind of keeping track of this, it's so easy for both us and our clients to only focus on what's not working or like,
Mhm.
I didn't close that, right? And
Mhm.
again, even some of my coworkers come out and say, hey, you learned something today, you made a touch point, you don't know, like look at what you've done
Mhm.
as a you made a session, you made a discovery call. Yeah, it didn't close. Okay, but you did those things and celebrate the actions that you do because the more of these you do, the more you will close. Eventually you'll close more effectively and more
Yeah.
efficiently and better conversion rate, but also numbers game. If you close only 10%, you get more clients, you're going to get more, right?
Yeah.
So there's two ways of doing it. So looking at each one of those as saying, all right, this week, sure, what are my wins? What are the things that I just do factually, just like our clients? So we have to really remind ourselves of that. And it's keeping that process going. And what is it within my zone of process development?
Mhm.
How do I get there? And maybe along those lines, I can touch back on what we talked about earlier. You mentioned the word mindset. I was going to ask about that because I was, talking to other providers from episodes about mindset shift. That's where it really starts. And I think a lot of it, at least for me, I noticed my mindset really blocked me in a lot of ways. I'm kind of curious, what do you see as like really important mindset shifts that you've seen in people or things that are holding them back or things that like really unlock things to move forward and really just get started and start being successful in running your practice? What needs to change kind of up here or how we talk to ourselves?
Mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just going to reinforce what we talked about because it's so important, especially as you're getting started, which is if you're not good at something, it doesn't mean stop doing it. It means keep doing it more until you're better at it. Right. And so I
Hmm.
think there's a point that is really common that happens with coaches where they'll be in the startup phase and they'll be reaching that end point of the startup phase. So they'll have gone through hours of work setting up their systems and their processes and really getting to the point where they're like, okay, you can get out there and you can really start marketing and messaging yourself. And they freeze because it's like, but it's like where the rubber meets the road, right? It's like, I actually have to start talking about what I do. And it's not for any other reason except for they're just not used to talking about what they do with people, right? And so in our program, in Wellness Coach Business Academy, one of the things that we specifically have our coaches do throughout the entire program is talk about what they do. They do it over and over again. So by the time that they reach that phase, they're like, oh, yeah, and I can't tell you the number of students that we've had that have actually gotten to that point where they were like, oh my gosh, I was at a sip and paint event and someone like asked me what I did and I didn't choke up this time. I literally, it was natural. I just talked about what I did because of the things that we practiced, right? Because
Yeah, yeah,
just like
yeah.
coaching, right? We learn the skills in coaching, and then we have to practice the skills in coaching. Before we can become nationally board certified health and wellness coaches, we have to practice, right?
Mhm.
With a bunch of people, right? In order to be qualified to take that exam and become nationally board certified. And it's the same thing happens in business, right? So before we can really feel like we're at a point where we can really feel comfortable and natural talking about our business, we have to practice it first. We have to get it out a few times. So maybe that means talking to yourself in the mirror. Maybe that means talking to yourself in the car when no one else is around and pretending like you're in these conversations and just working out the words out loud in your mouth. Like, oof, that did not slide off the tongue. Oof, that was awkward. Let me find a different way to say it. Right. And the
Yeah.
better you can get to about talking to yourself and practicing, the easier it is. So I would say that's like the number one is that it's not, you're not bad at something because you're bad at something. You're bad at something because you just need to do it more. And there's a million ways to do it in a safe space where you can get better so that you can get ready to be out in that public space that you want to be in. So
Mm.
yeah.
Gave me flashbacks to when I was training back in 2018. The last day we did a little hour where we said, let's all stand up in the room. It's like 30 something of us. And it was like, let's just do a little practice elevator speech. Go introduce yourself. Say your name and what you do. And then next person, you should go around, right? And it was, I remember being, I'm a coach, which means I can do everything. I can help you because of neuro. Like, oh God. And
Mhm.
then I was like, that was horrible. The next one, still horrible. And then like you start seeing the tweaking happening, right? And get to the point now, I'm like, someone asked me, I no longer have that. I used to have that. What do I do? How to explain this monumental mindset shift? And I'm like, yeah, I'm a health and wellness coach. I help people that, it does get easier, and it's that repetition. So we're working with your friend. And this is maybe one thing I've thought about. I was thinking to answer about how I answer this question about mindset shift. For me, was realizing that just because you're a solo practitioner doesn't mean to do it all yourself.
Mhm.
You do not have to become a web designer. You do not have to get an MBA. You do not have to, become a social media expert and like buy a brand new camera and audio equipment, right? You don't have to know all the pieces of run a business, because
Mhm.
even sole providers you can outsource, right? You can get knowledge-based information, right? Like what you provide, Jen, right? There's tools like Vibely that does the scheduling for you, right? Or there are people who help you out too if you need if you need a lawyer help with your contract, right? That you are a solo business who can do other businesses that help you give a better experience to your clients. You don't have to learn all your taxes, QuickBooks or something, right? That you're not by yourself in either this journey, but also in the tools and how to get help. And that to me was like, oh, you don't have to do it all yourself. Do the things that
Right.
you're great at, the ones outsource or learn in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's actually empowering if you think about it as a business owner to be like, wow, you mean I can actually delegate some of this to someone else? Like, I don't have to actually do everything. So, when you start your own business, you have literally hired yourself, right? You've given yourself an offer letter, you've signed it, and you've agreed to being the CEO of your business. So, if you
Mhm.
take yourself out of the coach hat and set yourself in that CEO hat, what are some of the decisions that you have to make? Well, you have to decide what you're good at and what you're not good at, which means what you want to either get better at because it is something you want to get better at, or something that you can actually delegate out to someone else, right? And so maybe that is marketing, maybe that's someone to create flyers for you, your social media images, like whatever that looks like, right? You get to ultimately decide. You're the CEO of your own business. And there is something incredibly empowering in being able to sit in that space and be like, wow, I get to decide. That's
Yeah.
cool, right? So, yeah.
Powerful and scary sometimes. With great power comes great responsibility, right? And that
Yeah.
reminds me of something, Jen, that I remember when I was doing this MBA course, kind of it came up to me again, and kind of think it's a good reminder that I think that sometimes when we are starting off, looking at your resources, you might have more time, like you mentioned, your
Mhm.
counter's open. People might not have as much, maybe financial resources because they spend all
Mhm.
the money on the course. They may take some time off or whatever, right? And so you think, well, you know what? I don't have the time to. I'm just gonna instead of time, I'm gonna do it myself to save money. Why don't you keep something into account when you do this mindset? Keep track of how much time you're doing to save money,
Mhm.
because sometimes the opportunity cost, the term here, right, of your, the idea is like you can be the world's best painter of the house, right?
Mhm.
But if you make more money putting a service, pay someone else to do that because your time's more valuable somewhere else, right? If it is
Mhm.
because it's going to take you way too long and that cuts into other things you want to do, or that you just really dislike doing that, so it drains you in a way that you cannot believe. Like there's a lot of cost there that's hidden from you doing it.
Yeah.
So look at like what else you could, how you're managing your time and where it makes sense, either financially or even resource of your time wise, to outsource this. Even if you can do something, it may not always be the best for you to do it either.
Yeah. So in business, we look at this model that talks about there is a finite amount of time, money, and resources at the end of the day, right? It's kind of like this
Right.
triangle. And I think one of the things that as a business owner and a coach, right, you can look at is, okay, so what what do my numbers look like in each of those buckets, right? And then how do I sort of budget them appropriately, right, in each of those areas? So maybe I have more time and less money to be able to do some things, great. Then maybe I'm not delegating out as much because I've got more time to learn it and do it myself. Maybe I have a resource available, right? So maybe I have like a teenage son who's like, I love social media. Fabulous. Great.
Yeah.
Guess what? You're my new social media manager, right? So now we have
Right.
a resource we just delegated to. So thinking about that creatively as well, but every single business out there, right, all has a finite amount of time, money, and resources. And it's just a matter of budgeting and deciding where we're best using those resources available or those pieces available. So yeah, I think it's a great point just to think about. So mhm.
Yeah, and speaking, I think a lot of people think about starting a practice. We've talked a lot about earlier on about people in training programs, and there's more uh, educational awareness on like this is an option, but there's not as much information how to do it. Actually, even in those little hour brief like lunch and learns, um, and then people sometimes fall in this. Or I see a lot of people this or category. It's like, well, get a job or have a private practice. And I read a
Mhm.
study that most people actually can do both. And I wonder if we can talk about that because I think people feel, well, how do I have a job? And I'm like, that's actually a very effective way of doing this is you can have other sources of income and then your business doesn't have to be all or none. It
Yeah.
could be something you slowly build out at, like you mentioned, your pace, because the tools you have can build it out for you. So I think there's a lot of people that fall in this category. They don't almost believe that they can do it because they already have. It's like one or the other. So have you
Mhm.
kind of some of your work with those kind of people? Maybe the mindset changes there. How that's different from someone who's maybe going all in because they quit their job and just only doing that, 9 to 5 or 9 to 9.
Yeah, well, I would actually say it's probably the most common that I work with coaches that are doing a mix of both, that are both in some type of, whether it's employment or contract situation, and also working on growing their business at the same time. That's really incredibly common until they get to a point where they feel like they're booked up enough in their private practice and then they can either leave or kind of make some adjustments, right? So that tends to be a really common area. And that's not for everyone, right? There's definitely people out there that are like, all right, I'm all in. I'm doing this full time, and that's okay. That's I mean, very normal too, right? So just to know that all of it's normal, I think the key piece with it is just having that plan in the beginning to say, okay, so I'm going to do both because I want to make sure I can bring in enough money to be able to sustain my own lifestyle while also growing this business. And in order to do that, here's my plan. I'm going to get a contract job and it's going to be for this many hours a month so that way I have this many hours to focus on my business and create that plan ahead of time, right? So that you
Mhm.
have those realistic, again, work hours. And what does that look like for you? And does it fit within the goals that in the lifestyle and the values that you have, right? So, you know, I would say one example is a lot of times I have people that come to me and say, well, I have a strong value of family. And that means I do not want to work on nights or weekends. And I would agree. I also have a strong value of family. But when I very first started my business, I had to say, for the first 6 months, I'm going to take on coaching sessions after my kids go down for bed because that is the time I need to be able to take on a coaching session. And eventually I was able to switch out of that and not take on evening sessions, or that was the time I needed to do my marketing because I was, doing other things during the day and I didn't have that available time. And
Mhm.
so there might be a limited amount of time where you have to say, okay, my ultimate goal is that I'm not going to work on nights and weekends for the next 6 months, for the next year. I'm going to do this because it's a longer term vision that I'm after. And then I'm going to reassess. And so, kind of setting that goal for yourself, being okay with it, and knowing that there's a time limit to it for you to reassess and change if it's not working for you, I think are
Mm.
key things. And like overall, just creating that sort of success plan for yourself and your business. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like to my clients, I'm like, this choice you make is not gonna be the last choice you make. We often think like, oh, I don't know. It's like,
Mhm.
what should I do? Is a fork in the road? Be like, well, then you can create another fork in the road, right?
Yep.
And then it's kind of saying that your first five versus like the next stage, stage two, stage three that you have, right?
Mhm.
That stage might look really different because you are spending 8% of your time with the marketing, having to figure where it fits in, and just almost like going to school. Maybe you're pulling all nighters, you're crying for your exam because you kind of got a week of exams, so you're gonna do that week, but you're not gonna try to live your life that way. So saying like this is
Yep.
a unique period. We're studying for the SATs or the MCAT, whatever it is. We're kind of getting it in gear. So it's not what I want, but to stay on for a short period. I'm gonna reevaluate, make sure I stay as healthy as I can during this. It's
Yes.
not a burnout period, and then I can't continue on. It's like a faster paced sprint. And
Yes.
then knowing that I'm working hard now, planting seeds now, so that later on I have that flexibility I want, where I'm able to work the hours I want, envision, and set those boundaries because I built that system for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm a big fan of pairing that up with a time-based goal as well, so that, it's not like, well, when I achieve, this income level or whatever, then I can make a change, because we don't know how long that might be, right? And
Yeah.
so how hard would that be to really stick with that for the long term? But if you say, I'm going to do this for the next 8 months, and then I can celebrate and say, wow, I did that for 8 months, and now I can decide if I'm going to do something different. But now you still have a success goalpost that you can celebrate, because you stuck to that thing for 6 months, and that was what your level of success or achievement was, right? To say, I'm going to stick with this for 6 months, and then I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to decide if it still makes sense or if I'm going to change it.
Yeah.
And for me, that was really, I would say that that's something I actually adopted kind of as I was building out my business, because otherwise, if you change at some point, there's a chance that you can feel like, gosh, you know what, I didn't achieve that goal, and now I feel like I failed at it, right? Where having that time based, I'm going to do this for this amount of time, and then I'm going to see, did it work? Did it not work? Was it a good try? Or, did I learn something from it? And do I want to make a change and move forward and still feel like, wow, there was actually a level of success that happened there because I grew and I made it to my end goal, which was the time. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I created a little snippet reel about this a few months ago for the value community, saying, you kind of said earlier in this podcast, that don't make it an outcome goal, make it a process goal.
Hmm.
Right? It's not about I'm
Hmm.
reading a book in a month. It's I'm reading 10 minutes a day. And can
Yes.
you read 10 minutes a day? So you're saying don't make it my goal is to make X amount of salary for in 6 months. It's like, no, my goal is to spend 8 months doing this journey.
Yes.
Right. And then I'm going to see at 8 months what I learned and how I continue the journey or alter it. And I met that goal because for 8 months I went on an entrepreneurial journey. And then from there, you can always take that learning for those next steps. What it look like? It's not just 8 months and it doesn't go for anything. Like if you take a pause again, that learning stays with you, or the systems you put in place now are set for you. Right. So you're kind of
Yeah.
laying that foundation. Yeah. So speaking of next episode, I know you and I, when we talk, we can go for a long time, and I always love talking with you. But I want to give people like a little more kind of information. Okay, so now some of these tools, right? So we talk about Bali having them. Obviously, Wellspired has them in different ways, and we started building out workshops now for lead generation, right?
Mhm.
How a lot of things we suggested, right? Can we clients sign on without having a password, so it's easier for them, right? So
Mhm.
so many tools here, but I'm curious. I know them well now, but you provide a lot of different kind of courses and structures and ways to support coaches, whether they're starting out or just figuring it out. So, what if we could talk a little bit more the detailed of what Wellspires offers and how the different programs work?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. So, for coaches who are just in the beginning phases of their journey, they are either in the process of trying to launch their own business, or they are maybe just graduated and brand new, and that's the pathway that they know that they want to go down, is to start their own business. We have Wellness Coach Business Academy, which is a really great foundations course and walks you all the way through the moment that you're first certified, all the way to being able to successfully take on clients that start up in that book 5 phases. Those 2 phases is what that's ideal for. So if you're anywhere in those phases, it's a great program to go through. And it's really unlike any other program that's out there, because we do pair up asynchronous, trainings and learnings, but we have this community and this culture that just comes together to really create just a really great atmosphere where you're talking to coaches who have been doing it for years. And you're talking to other coaches who are in it at the same point that you're at it too. So you get both of the angles to kind of learn from people who've
Mm.
already done it and hear from them, and also from the coaches who are brand new and they're going through it with you. So we create tons of connection points throughout the month so that you really never feel alone on that journey or isolated, which is one of the number one challenges that we hear from coaches. It feels very lonely and isolating when you're doing it on your own. So we've broken down that barrier, and that's really what that's all about. If you're in that build phase or you're a coach that's been in practice for a while, we have our Wellspired membership where we do monthly CEU classes and also have that community network. I was mentioning that group that has been in practice for a while for our new coaches. That's where those members get to mingle with some of our newer ones too. And they have a
Mm.
lot of fun sort of acting and being mentors or talking about what they've learned along their journey, and also being able to get together with our community on a regular basis to really grow, learn, connect, build confidence in new specific areas and skills that they might be wanting to learn about. So that's our other option too. But for anybody who's kind of interested or wanting to learn just a little bit more about sort of these initial steps or stages in getting your business started, we have a training that's coming up here actually next week, depending on when this is coming out, called 5 Steps to Jumpstart Your Wellness Coaching Business. And it's a free class or a free workshop that you can come to. And it's approved for a CEU through the national board. So if you're nationally board certified, definitely come because it's worth a free CEU. And we'll be going through some of those like key pieces that you need to know. We talk about mindset and what are those key elements that you really should have in place to be able to launch your business. We talk about how do you price your your offer, right? Your coaching
Mm.
that you have.
Huge
How do you
question.
do that? That's like a
Yeah.
number one question we get. And then last but not least, we talk about kind of the 4 phase launch plan that we have, where it's every, those different phases that you need to go through. And
Mm.
if you come and you're live on the training with us, we actually give you the 4 phase launch plan guidebook. And so you get that as our gift for coming live. So definitely highly encouraged for you to come. You can check it out at learn.wellspired.co, co. And you can actually register right there, and it'll send you the email reminders to join and give you the Zoom link to join us. So yeah, so really great. And then I think we're doing some upcoming trainings for Vibely as well, which I'm super excited about. So next week we'll be doing some additional trainings. I'm sure more information will be coming out on that too. So
Yeah, and we're gonna have all these links on all our channels there to
awesome.
what Jen what mentioned, and also just so people who are watching who are in the Vibely community, we've been honored to kind of make this partnership with Jen, with Wellspired and Vibely, right? So, if you're a Vibely member, let us know. Jen's been really kind to offer special considerations for our members, and we've done the same. So, Wellspired members get special consideration for our platform too. We really see this beautiful partnership where we can help and collaborate in this synergistic way, right? It's like what to do and then how to do it, all working together. So if you're in either of our communities, let the other one know before you make a
Yeah.
purchase, because there's some special kind of partnership deals that we have for those people. So we'll be honored, Jen, to have you in our internal community. Always honored to have you in the big external community kind of learn. Please, if you guys need any help, reach out to Jen. She's awesome, caring team. Anyways, we can help to evaluate the tools, technology, kind of how to meld together. We really want to see that common value, seeing solo coaches thrive. We've been there. We see how wonderful it is to have a practice where you enjoy it, and how much your clients really, that transformation is priceless when it's in your own private practice. It is. I can't describe how much better it feels, to be honest with you, because it's
Mhm.
just you and the new. You really meet them where they're at and to all your full potential. So I hope to see a world where all coaches can feel that, whether they work for a company and have their private practice on the side. Now is the year. Technology is helping you out, and you have people always support you. So, Jen, thanks again for coming back. It was really requested kind of topic and episode. Looking forward to 2025 and Vibely Wellspired partnership. And any questions you have, please reach out to me or to Jen. We're both here to help out any way we can. Any last minute words, Jen, as we sign off here?
Absolutely. I totally agree. Any questions or anything, feel free to reach out, send me a DM. I love talking about business if you can't tell. And so we have lots of coaches that come to us and have questions, and we're here to answer them. So that's what we're here for, is just supporting each other and truly, right, being able to make sure that coaches can really thrive in the world that we live in today. Because I truly, truly believe that we live in a world where coaches have never been needed more than they are today. We absolutely need coaches in this world. And so we just need to show coaches how they can do that and thrive in practice and in their own lives, right? To be able to do this for the long term. So thanks again so much for having me on. It's been really fun being here.
Always honor and privilege. And thank you, everyone in the community. Looking forward in 2 weeks for our next live podcast. And we have a lot more exciting things coming in 2025 that we'll mention when we're ready. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Bye.
All right. It's hit the other one just in case.